Morning. Kumlena Bat Gemara. Today's daf is daf Mem Aleph. We stopped a few lines above the Mishnah. So we had first a machlekes Tanoim if a person can ask something that doesn't belong to him, and then we had a machlekes Amoraim. So first we had a machlekes Tanoim definitely. If you don't say the whole, you cannot ask something which is not yours, and then we had a machlekes Amoraim as well. And now the Gemara asked a couple of questions out of Amram and his and Nachman and Abizchak. How can they hold ein adam Moshe? We brought all these cases. So first we said if that person has a chelik in the shutfus, then in other words, he has a part ownership. So he's not asking someone else's thing; he's asking his own. And then finally, we made a distinction between a yid and a goy, and we said that when it comes to a yid, even though you could, in other words, now we're changing, we're changing it all around. These Amoraim hold like the Tanakama that says that you could aser a davar she'ena shaloi if you do a ma'aseh, do a pula, but when it comes to a yid, we don't believe that they really mean it. We don't believe they really mean it. So then we're up to the last thing is we asked the question. It says clearly on Mishnah two people holding onto a knife. We're talking about two Eden, obviously. And if we say over there one person had a mind of avodah zarah and one person didn't, how come it becomes aser? The Gemara could have answered that he has a chelik in the ownership, but Gemara instead said we're talking about a mummer. We're talking about a mummer. And then we asked the same question again, what we asked before about if you cause damage to somebody else. Then if they amazed you chayiv, and one of them is that you manasich his person's wine. How can you ask someone else's thing according to Rav Nachman? So again, the Gemara could have said he has a chelik in it, but instead the Gemara answered he's talking about Yisro mummer. So we're up to about 4 lines to the bottom. So this is what Rashi learned. The conclusion of the Gemara is that these Amorim also agree with the Tanakhama that a person could ask a davar she'en shaloi, but we just don't believe a yid means it. We think it's trying to oppress the other person, and that's the new line. Others learn pshat in the Gemara here that actually they maintain that the halacha like Rabbi Yehuda ben Seder, Rabbi Yehuda ben Baba, that ain't adam oisha davar she'en shaloi. And the Tesis and Daf Yudalot asks, and we discussed it a few days ago. If he shechts avodah zarah, doesn't he become a mummer straight away? If you're now introducing this idea that Amoraim here that what you do if you're shechting for avodah zarah, if you're a mummer, then we say that that's what it is, and therefore Adam Oishadav and Shaloi, but every single time that you're doing it, you're a mummer. So even if you can do l'shem harim and all that, you're still over avodah zarah, even though they think that someone's come out also. But why you're a mummer? And every time you shach the should be mummer. And Taisha makes and the Rishonim they talk about 3 different answers. One answer is you don't become a mummer till you do it 3 times. One answer you don't become a mummer till after you finish the first time. That means the next time you become a mummer. And the third answer is that Adbaz there says is that you said you don't want to be avodah zarah until you finish the shchita. Because the problem also is a mummer avodah zarah. As soon as you start cutting, you're ready over avodah zarah. And you're not chayiv, let's say, for the other things. So your shchita is not a shchita till you finish. So you became a mumma before you even finish your shchita. It's not happening. What do you mean the next time? Right now already. So Rambam says Gemara Zricha. And we did say there's a chiluk between Shabbos and avodah zarah because by Shabbos you're not over till the next. Even the Raj himself holds by Shabbos you're not a mumma till the next time you shecht. And the difference is by Shabbos is malech and machshavos. It has to do with doing a complete malacha. So therefore, you're not chayiv for chilul Shabbos until you finish the shchita. So and when it comes to avodah zarah, as soon as you start, you're avodah zarah. So when it comes to avodah zarah, the Rashba had to answer not the next time you're a mummer. Already now is a problem. So he says it must be talking about a case you had in mind that you don't want the avodah zarah to take place until you finish the whole shchita. But when it comes to hilchos Shabbos, you don't become a chalul Shabbos until you finish the shchita. The shchita's already over. So when you were shechting it, you were not a Chal Shabbos yet. That's why when it comes to Chal Shabbos, yes, and so when it comes to Chal Shabbos, only the next time you shecht, you're a mummer. We brought a conclusion now. He's through boy. What happened? They warned him. But keep all Hasra. He said, I don't care. Which is the din of Hasra. Hasra, you have to say, I acknowledge, and I don't care. And as a result of that, that's why it never even happened. It says in some Svarim that there never was really any capital punishment.
They did would do the Maisa.
All that, yeah. You shouldn't forget. Otherwise, they forgot. That's what Akiva says. You're a bezin of Katlonim if you kill somebody once in 70 years. Amalei, what would it be then? Do you say that Adam, answers somebody else's thing? Do we say that he meant to be Mitzayir over here, or do we say that he's a mummer? What do we say? So Gemara says, what do you mean? If he's mafkir his nefesh, I know. He has to say, I know. And in fact, the Buddha says you have to tell him exactly what kind of miss it is. And I know, and I don't care. So of course he's a mumma. He goes, not playing games anymore. Mishnah. Okay, ein shechting. We don't want now. This mission is talking about things of modifying. We don't want it to look like you're doing avodah zarah. So ein shechting. You're not supposed to shech loy letoich yamim. You're not supposed to shech into the sea. You take an animal, bring it up, over the sea, and shecht over there, because it looks like you're doing it to an avodah zarah, or at least to the malach of the yam. You're shechting to, or v'loy, because that's what Goyim obviously used to do. V'loy letoich naras, nor the same token, nor into the rivers. Take the animal and bring it over the river, and then shecht right there, standing in the water. V'loy letoich kelim, that you shouldn't go ahead and shecht and have a keli underneath it to capture all the blood, because it looks like that you're. What do you need the blood for? Probably the Zora. These are all modest ayin cases. But you could have, if you have a little pond, a little puddle, you could shecht into an uga of water, let's say, because there it looks like you just don't want the place around you to be dirty. And nobody ever does avodah zarah, just does over a puddle. Puddle is not chashiv. Or bisfina on a ship. You're allowed to do it al gabi kalim. You're allowed to al gabi kalim, and then what happens is the blood runs out of the kalim down the side of the boat into the ocean, and you're doing that because you don't want the ship to be full of sullied with blood everywhere. Ain't that so? There's no there when it's obvious what you're doing is not for avodah zarah. You're doing it for another reason. There's no matter sign. Ain't shechtin leguma. You do not shecht into a gum into a whole kol ikaro. Aval oisa guma besa, but you're allowed to make this little pit, trap. Exactly, okay, drain. Bishvil shechanas hadam l'teicha. First he started saying, don't make any guma. Sounds like everywhere. Then he said, but in your house you're allowed to. And then he says, b'shuk lo yasakim, but in the marketplace you don't do, which is going to be problematic. So when you say, don't make a guma, what are you talking about? The marketplace. So then what do you have to repeat it again? So what's going on over here? Okay. Well, b'shuk lo yasakim. And you should not do that in the shuk. The Teja said when we say that the problem with the guma is only if it's clean, but if it's dirty, then nobody's in suspect that you are doing it for avodah zarah. Avodah zarah, you treat it with a little covered, a little dignity. You're not going to put a hole full of dirt and everything else for avodah zarah. And the Teja is still better not to do any guma because even if it's dirty. Patience lays down an interesting rule. We have a rule by Marasayin. Rav says in Ksudis and Shabbos and other places that anything which is also Marasayin, even in public, is also Marasayin. So why are you allowed to do it in your house? We have a rule. We talk things. More Shabbat talk about to spread out if your clothes are wet, if you to hang them up to dry. Do that. Looks like you won't do it on Shabbos, and so even b'chad chadorim is also going to Rav. So why over here, guma, the shuk you're not allowed to, but in your house you are allowed to. If it's chamadas ayin, it's also everywhere. I remember when butter came out, margarine came out in the 60s. All the rabbanim and paskin that if you eat margarine, you have to have on the table the wrapper, or whatever, or the box. Remember in the first years,
milk. What do you call the
rice milk and almond milk,
all these artificial milks.
By now, already, I guess people are so used to. And anyway, so taste leads a cloud.
He writes that you're supposed to warm up, so you've got to put almonds in the milk, floating in it, so that people can.
Yeah, but today when so many people do. Okay, like margarine, no one does that today. Everyone uses margarine. So taste leads a very important rule. When do we say maras ayin is also b'chad chadorim? That you're doing exactly the same thing you do in public. And in public, people with maras ayin, so you do the chadich dorim. We say no, it's also because next time you do it in public. But if the way you do it inside your house, people right away realize this is nothing but the conclusion they're making is totally wrong. If you're doing it in a hole in the house, it's obvious you're doing it because you know what, blood splattering everywhere. So you want it right in a little corner or in a little hole there and keep it there. Anybody else would have been in the house where Shas Maisi did would right away understand why you're doing it. They wouldn't come to that same conclusion. That's not marasayin. When do we say marasayin? If the same chash that they would have in Bishuk, they would have in the Chadi Chadorim. But over here, nobody's there. So we say marasayin is also everywhere. But if the what do you call it? If the maris ayin, if it's something that they're seeing you doing at home, they rather understand why you're doing it. Nothing to do with the chash, then there's no isur of chadichalor. Interesting you say the thesis. Let's continue the Gemara here. That's our bottom thesis on this page here. Then the Gemara continues. Why should we don't want you to follow the tzdukim. Interesting, we're calling the goyim here the tzdukim. I'm sure there was a I'm sure there was a sense of thing here. It says on the side it's Orlem Haminim. Okay, then the Gemara ain't sure like why don't we say do into the sea the light the Amri Lissar the Yamakashachet. People are gonna conclude that you're doing it. It looks like Marasaina Vedazor Nami. Why can't you say you're talking about Vedazor? Sometimes people look at this, they use the shecht to their image. So why don't you say Nami Amri Libabu Kashachet? He's sheching and there's a reflection of his image in the water and looks like there's an avodah zarah. People, someone of the avodah zarah is what they should shech to themselves. Amarava about kurim shana. We're talking about muddy water, so there's no reflection. But taka, that's why you're allowed to. But taka, if it be water that you can reflect yourself, maybe there's not a sign there as well. What kind of avodah zarah was that? Don't know. Okay. Ein sheikh l'gume v'amet. You said ein sheikhtin. This Mishnah, which ends this whole first part of Chulin, because then the next page starts back to the real Shchita thing. I'll try to get a picture of the anatomy of an animal, so that when we learn, we can point. It won't be colored, but maybe black and white. I can get something. I'll look at one of these photos if we can find it. So we're looking at now. We're talking about Marasayim. We said before you shouldn't shech avodah zarah. Now we're talking about if it looks like you're shechting avodah zarah, it's also forbidden. So you're not allowed to shech an animal bring the animal to the ocean or to the river and shech with the head over the water. It looks like you're shechting to the side of the mayim. And now the Mishnah say we're in Daf Mem Aleph Beis by 5 lines on top. You're not allowed to shech into a hole, into a guma. But if it starts off, you're not allowed to shech in a guma. And then it says, but if it's in your house, you're allowed to, because they're obviously doing it because you wanted blood to be collected, but you shouldn't shecht it in the shuk. But first you start out saying unequivocally, you're not allowed to shecht anywhere. And then you tell me the house, you're allowed to, but in the shuk you're not allowed to. So what's going on here? Well, Amr, you said ain't shecht l'guma klal. What about so my first answer is, and Porovish logs him up, Reisha beguma shebeshuk. He's explaining when it says that then, but the shuk don't do it, is explaining the beginning of the Mishnah, when he said don't do it in a guma, we meant don't do it in a guma v'shuk. Okay, but that's Abai. Rabbi doesn't like it because why the Mishnah repeats it? Rabbi, Hamiktani Seifa, the conclusion is v'shuk l'yasa came Mechlal Deresh. La v'shuk is kin. We're talking about Mechlal and Algemein. Generally, you're not allowed to shecht in a guma. It looks like a very zara. Elam Rabbi says Rabbi Hochi Kambar. Rabbi said this is how he learned. Ein shecht in a guma kolika. You're not allowed to shecht at all into any guma. No, even in your house not allowed to. Why? It looks like you're following the goyim. If somebody wants to keep it clean and blood everywhere, what do? This is what you do. Not you're shechting directly. You bring the head of the animal, put it over the guma, and you shecht it. That looks like avodah zarah. What you did is you make a little canal, a little ridge, right? A little distance from the guma, and then when you shecht it and make it on a slope. The dam sheites is the guma, that then the blood runs down into this guma. So you're not shechting it over the guma, you're shechting it near the guma. In the shuk, you shouldn't even do that. So when it starts off, don't shecht the guma, even at home. So shech mamish, the animal over the guma, is not forbidden. Then it suggests in the house you want to make a guma, make it near the guma. But even that in the shuk you don't do, because it's marasai. Tani also we actually look like Rav Hayim Halab. You go in a ship, ain't like Malcolm Silishcha. You have no words to shech. Mighty God, the Chutz L'Svina. You stretch your hand out. You shech with your hand outside of the ship. Now but we just said before you're not allowed to have the animal overhanging the water. So v'sheichet v'dam sheich v'yed al doifn hasvina. And therefore, what you do is again, you're like right near the edge, and then the blood doesn't land on the water. Blood lands on the sides of the ship, and it runs down the ship, so nothing goes into the ship. You want to keep it clean. And the same thing of ein sheich l'guma. Now the Bryce says clearly like Rava, you don't sheich directly into the guma. Kolika of a right l'nake chatzeri. You want to keep your chatzah clean. Our mission not even the house. You shecht it outside the guma, but damn sheish of the guma. Then the blood runs into the guma. Over shukal yasakain in the marketplace, don't do that because mishum shenemar over chukaseim loisa leichel. Don't follow the ways of the goyim. And if he did do that, you have to check him to see whether he's not Pekadis, and then, and Rashi concludes, and why do we need to know that? And Rashi says, so you don't eat his bread, and nor do you drink his wine. So you have to check after and see if he's a min.
What's the reason for all that?
It looks like that's how they're going to do Avodah Zarah. They would check to the side of water, and so on. Anything which is irrational, you're not allowed to follow in their ways. Yeah. You have to check out after them. Interesting. We find the same expression by the Balamoyer says in Masechet Shabbos that if somebody doesn't want to have chamin on Shabbos, you have to check after him to see if he's a duki. And let's say he is, my nafkamina. So it seems that Rashi says that it's not enough just to know the guy is a mummer, because there are ramifications. If it's a duki, you can't trust as this and that. But all the din we had before that you can't trust, whatever the machmir, but the rest you can't trust anything. And they don't believe in either. You can't trust as kasha. So there are ramifications. I never understood that Balamoy. It's actually brought down in Zayin, I think, and other places in Rishon Gimel. It said if you don't eat hot chont on Shabbos, then you have to be baidik that whether he's from the Zdukim that believe, the Torah, they don't believe in Torah Shabbat Peh, only in Torah Shabbat Sab, and the Loisavada Eichel Shasechem, which I never understood. Because they say Loisavada means you shouldn't have a fire at all in your house. Not you shouldn't light, the way we learn, but they shouldn't have. It doesn't matter if you lit it before Shabbos. That's why we have to eat chametz to show them wrong. So I never understood because we light candles. The moment you light candles, you've proven that the types Loisavada means you're not allowed to light, because what helps if you light before Shabbos? That
like that goes the whole day long.
They believe in Shabbos like us Friday night and Shabbos by day as well. So why do we need chametz? Other yem, I don't have a good shot. Why we need? Somebody has a shot I would love to hear. Why isn't that enough to prove? In fact, I asked many Gedolei Yisrael that I met over the years, and they always said to me, "We'll come back to you." I've yet to have someone come back to me. Okay, let's go back to the Mishnah. Next Mishnah. Hasheichit l'shem oilam. If you find someone to talk about it, we appreciate it. Hasheichit l'shem oilam. Now, if somebody shechts, we talk about Marasayin. This is Rashi is very important because the Sdei Chemed has a whole arichas and a chakira. What's wrong with Marasayin? So somebody sees I did something wrong, and so what? So he brings, and big enough means halacha. Is the pshat, and I don't think he brings the Rashi here, but is the pshat because people will learn from you. If they see that you do this, they don't understand what you actually did, and they'll think, "Oh, you're allowed to do that." If you have butter there and you're eating a salami sandwich with butter, they think, "Oh, they don't know it's margarine," and they'll think you're allowed to. They know we're poshut scared. That's like the either a lower standard of the either. You're not giving him anything, just that he looks at you and you're his role model or whatever, and he says, "Oh, I say for me, and this is what he does." There's not a sign. That's one thing, and the other part is. Well, Yisim Nikiyim Hashem Yisrael. It's our duty not only to be showing to the mitzvahs, but that other people should not think that we're not. Because while Yisim Nikiyim Hashem Yisrael is actually halacha. One big nafkamin halacha, just simple nafkamin is: are you allowed to walk into a McDonald's with a yarmulke to buy a Coke? If the word is that well, Yisim, and then they want to say, and then Gufa, the Achreinim have, which one means what? People think you're allowed to walk in and buy a burger there. Are they going to learn from you that? Especially walking with a yarmulke, they'll assume you're buying a coffee or Coke or something else. But if it's, whatever. These kind of communities, and you can teach both ways. You can argue. But the point is, what is Marasayin? And interesting, because Rashi here clearly says that you can learn from him. That's the problem, as we'll see. Same question. But maybe lesser question, maybe a Coke to see what, I don't know. Same idea. Hasheichet l'shem oile l'shem. Okay, so now the din is called chutichut. You're not allowed to shecht a korban outside the Beis Hamikdash. But if you take chulin, an ordinary animal, and you're outside the Beis Hamikdash, and you say, "I'm shechting this to be a korban," meaningless because it's not a korban. So you just shecht an animal. You said words. It's jargon. It doesn't mean anything. So what happened like this? So we're going to say that if people are able to think that you are mekadosh the animal right now and then, or you makadosh the animal, that this animal is taken not chulin but kodesh, and now you're checking it outside, then it's a problem of marasayin. But if it's a kind of a carbon that you said that you can't be, it's not some davar hanidid or davar hanidiv. I'm bringing a chatas. As an ordinary chulin, I'm bringing this as a chatas. You can't donate a chatas, either you chayiv or not chayiv. And the Gemara's attitude here is that if you bring a chat, everyone knows that you did an aveda. Everyone knows if you did an aveda, you chatas, because in fact it's part of your tshuva to announce whatever. So everyone knows. Osham, everyone knows. But so therefore, if it's davar nid, people can make a mistake. Problem out of sign. If it's something that is obviously couldn't have made a mistake, there's no matter sign. So that's a mishnah. You take an ordinary animal, chulun, you say I'm doing it for an oil is something that you can donate, or l'shem zvachim, or any other carbon that can be donated. L'shem asham toli or an asham toli. More than asking a question, you cannot donate asham toli. Asham toli is you ate a piece of fat, so you don't know if it's treif or kosher, or according to the rule in krisis and machlekes whether it's two pieces of fat or one piece of fat. Two pieces, one is definitely kosher, definitely treif. But the bottom line is, the Gemara is going to ask you a question. You cannot donate it. Or the same pesach, the same toid, or same korban pesach. You cannot donate a pesach, and yet it's included. Or a korban toid, the shchitas, psul. All these are possible. Why? Midrabanan. Possible means it's mutter the animal itself. It's mutter not, but it's possible the shchita because marasayin. But Rab Shimon machshin. Rashi learns that Rab Shimon does not believe in does not believe in the whole concept of marasayin. And Toysa says, what does it have to do with, that's not for Rab Shimon at all. Rab Shimon holds that any shchita you didn't shech the way you're supposed to is not called a shchita. The problem is not marasayin. There's no shchita here. Nothing happened. You just killed an animal. Yeah. That Toysa is a little bit hard to understand. So what? But still, isn't it still marasayin? So what if it's, you tell me technicality is not shchita, but it's still marasayin. So Rashi holds that Rab Shimon does not believe in the whole concept of marasayin. So again, if one of them has in mind the wrong thing, it ruins the whole animal. For a chatas, all the same osham for an osham. All of these things that you cannot just make it up. It has to, it has to be kodesh chitosik sheda. The shchita is kosher. Why is shchita kosher? Because it's obvious that it's not a carbon, and you stop saying things. So this is the rule. Anything which could be donated is marasayin. It's kosher. So the Gemara Osham toli bar nidavnidavo. You can donate an osham toli. So this follows the view. Rabbi Yechon Hamani, Rabbi Elazar. This Rabbi Elazar will learn those in krisis. The Amaro holds that misnadim adam that a person can donate, not could that should donate. Osham toli, a person should donate osham toli b'chol yom, every single day. You should donate because and then we'll have a discussion more than Motzei Yom Kippur what happens. Because every day it's inevitable that you didn't. I mean, what a sad way of looking at things. That every day you probably did an aveda you don't even know. So, and remember, Asham Tala, what it does is it prevents you from having punishment. You shouldn't. When you find out you innovate, you bring another karmakatas. Pesach can be donated. Zman, the time is fixed. The rest of the year is not Pesach. What does it mean? Shiny Pesach. There's no din when you have to set it aside. You're making it at a Pesach, but you can set it aside at any day of the year. So therefore, it's a davar donated, and then it becomes a shlom as well. So it's a davar that's donated. Amar Rabbi Yana said, Rabbi Yana, only if the animals are tamim. If we see you saying this about an animal with a mum, which everyone knows cannot be a carbon, then maybe everyone knows it's not a carbon. There's no problem of marasayin. Rabbi Yechon says no, because not all the mumen are not that noticeable. Furthermore, even the mumen that are noticeable, sometimes the mum is covered. Wearing a pouch over or something, sometimes it's covered and people don't know. So we have to make blanket yisurim. You can't stop playing around. Yeah, this case, no. We're talking about a case where he's not mechuyev achatas, so therefore nobody could, and everyone knows that. It's amazing. Everyone knows if you sinned or not. So you're not, avol mechuyev chatas. If he's taka, everyone knows he's done an aveda, and the same saying, I'm bringing chatas, people are going to suspect you already set aside the animal in your house, it's a carbon, and you're being sheikh b'chutz, and people are going to say, oh, you're allowed to be sheikh b'chutz. You're allowed to sheikh b'chutz. I said, Rashi, a few times throughout this Mishnah and the Gemara, seems to be learned clearly, we're worried that people are going to learn from you, or they're not going, or they realize it's not a carbon, they're not going to learn from you. So the Gemara said, Ema, so Rabbi Yechon will answer, talking about here, l'shem chatosehu oisa. He said here, when he said when mechuyev chatas is also he said l'shem chatos. He clearly said enunciated from my chatas, and people know you didn't have Ada, so there's a problem out of sign. But any other time, there's no problem out of sign. Well, they come to shem chatosi, but he didn't say shem chatosi. Our Mishnah is talking about. He said, yeah. So he said, if he said l'shem chatosi, then it's a problem. That's what we're talking about. He says, but if he doesn't, if he's not chayv chatos, our Mishnah says he said l'shem chatosi. So if he's not chayv chatos, there's no matter sign. Everyone knows he stopped talking. He stopped talking shtusim because he didn't set aside the carbon. It didn't. But that Rechana says, but if he didn't aveda, then he said l'shem chatosi, it'd be a problem. L'shem Tamura, the same thing. He has no carbon in his house. Well, yes, if he has a carbon in his house, what's Tamura? Tamura is the carbon that I have. I want to swap over to the transfer to this one, which Nava Yahu Tamura Sakai, they're both holy. He's Ema. So we said, but if he has a carbon in his house, people might suspect that he did take a carbon, and you could be a problem. Ema Muri Amabe. I heard the carbon L'shem Tamura Zivchi. He didn't say it's from my carbon at home. Who cares if he has a carbon at home? Our Mishnah talking about, he says, I'm doing it for the carbon at home. So it seems because he has no carbon at home, and it seems everybody knows if you have a carbon at home. It's interesting. Everyone knows everybody's business. Everyone knows you don't have a carbon at home, so therefore there's no amount of sign. But if you did have a carbon at home, it would be a problem. Zakla. What's the Mishnah coming to the You already exhausted every possible case. What do you come to include? The oil of a nazir. The Mao Tamer, I would have thought that nothing can go wrong by an oilers nazir. The whole idea of a nazir is l'chayda nediva. You don't have to be a nazir. So I would have thought that he's not a nazir. So people are going to. It's not going to be a problem. The betzina. I would have thought that rather than maybe he was that maybe he was another betzina, and therefore in 30 days people are gonna suspect that maybe he did become a nazir, and that's why coming to tell you that that there's an Indian here of anything nidav and nidav. It could be a problem. People generally know everybody's business, but Nazidas for 30 days, you don't see the hair yet. So, in 30 days, if you had a crew cut before you started, you can't really tell. And if you didn't drink wine, you can't really, maybe he's allergic to whatever it is, to grapes or to the other thing they put into the wine. So therefore we wouldn't have known. On commercial law, that it is considered that we are worried. It's a dover that's nidav and nidav, and what people might learn from him, thinking that you can do something outside. I made a carbon first, and then there's a problem. However, so that's what shchita is possible. Then the Mishnah concludes, but if it's something that you cannot be menader, there's no problem. So what's come to teach you? That oila yeledis, if he says that I'm bringing this for the oila for my wife who gave birth, it is kosher. Why? Because you didn't make a neder for it. Even though l'chayda you might fall under the gedder of neder, right? Amar Allah Elisha told me that he has no wife. Avayash Elisha, he has a wife. Ema l'shmaha, he said maybe doing it on her behalf. Okay. No, but and that's the chiddush. The chiddush here is that if he has a wife, even though he's the one who's doing it, not her, he's doing it. We are choishish here that the din is that is possible. Why? Because we are choishish that maybe. Is taka nidav and nidav? You're doing it for behalf of his wife, and therefore people say, "Oh, you're doing bechutz now." But you're allowed to do shchita bechutz by carbon. Then the Gemara, Amar Abu said Abu, he says, "Kol Hashem oilas I'm doing it on behalf of my wife." Then the Gemara pshita, if he's doing it on behalf of his wife, then what's the chiddush? Of course, the davar hanidav and nidav. Ma'atem he said the older kol havlei. If he had a baby, don't think everybody would have known. So the chayla, if everybody would have known, and people don't know he had a baby, then it's not. It's definitely it's time talking, and it's nothing. It's because not shaykh this kind of a carbon, and therefore would say there's no problem with my commercial law. Aimer apule apil. Maybe they miscarried, and that you don't advertise. You don't advertise. It's a very private thing, and you don't advertise. Anyway, stop a bit commercial.